Welcome to the Heal with Kelly podcast. I'm Kelly Noonan-Gorse, and every week I speak to the leading doctors, healers, spiritual teachers, and scientists to find out what is truly possible when it comes to healing. I also interview real people with extraordinary healing stories. My philosophy is, what's possible for one is possible for all. Thank you for joining me on this beautiful journey of remembering our divine nature and tapping into the truths that shall set us free. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Heal with Kelly podcast. I am as excited as ever. I always say that every episode, but it is because I like my job. To welcome Dr. Rangan Chatterjee here with us today. He's kicking off his podcast tour, and we're just so honored to have you.
Kelly, I'm delighted to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's a pleasure. It's an honor. So, because Forbes calls you the most influential medical doctor in the UK, that's so cool. Dr. Rangan Chatterjee has been practicing for over 23 years. He's a professor of health communication and education at Chester Medical School and is known for his ability to simplify complex health information and inspire people to make positive changes in their lives. So you came to the right podcast. He hosts the most listened to health podcast in Europe, Feel Better, Live More, which has had over 250 million listens to date. And he's published 5 number one Sunday Times bestselling books, which has sold over 1 million copies worldwide. I mean, that is like, you're amazing. So his 6th book, Make Change That Lasts, 9 Simple Ways to Break Free from the Habits That Hold You Back, will be out later this year, and it's his most original, ambitious book to date. I am so excited. It's exactly what I need right now. And it's going to help people become healthier, happier, by helping them understand the real reasons why they struggle to make positive changes that actually last. And I will just finish by saying that Dr. Gabor Mate calls Rangan's new book his finest work yet, a distillation of decades of medical experience, scientific study, and a lifetime of learning the lessons of personal challenges. It is a truly wonderful, astute, reader-friendly, and eminently practical guide to healthy living, something we all need.
I think I need it as well.
Yes, I mean, so what inspired you to write this book?
So, Kelly, I've been a doctor now for 23 years. Okay, in that time, I've seen tens of thousands of patients. And for many years, I have said in public that 80 to 90% of what we see as doctors these days is in some way related to our collective modern lifestyles. Now, to be really clear, I'm not putting blame on anybody. I understand that life can feel tough. It can really be tough. There's a lot of pressures on people these days. So a lot of people are not able to make the changes that they actually want to make in their life. Because I fundamentally believe that everyone wants to be well. Everyone wants to be healthy and have energy and vitality and the ability to be present with the people around them. We all want that. And I've always wondered, I've always been fascinated by root causes as a doctor. And I always used to wonder when someone came in to see me, even with something quite trivial, let's say, I always used to think, why is this person coming in today? Right? What is going on in their life that means today, in the UK, they've taken half a day off work, they've got an appointment with a doctor, they're waiting for 40 minutes in the waiting room. What is going on in their life that means that they've ended up with me today? So I've always been fascinated by root causes. Now, if 80 to 90% of what we see as doctors is related to the way we're living our lives, then the natural kind of conclusion from that is that we need to help people live healthier lives, right? And in my very first book back in 2017, I outlined what I considered to be the 4 pillars of health: food, movement, sleep, and relaxation. And I say these are 4 key areas that not only have the most impact on our health, we also have a fair degree of control over them. And what we're looking for is not perfection in any one of those 4, but balance. And I still stand by that. But as I have progressed through my career, and as I think deeply about the patients who really transform their life for good, not just for a few weeks, not just in January, not just for a few months, but those who actually make change that lasts, it's not just enough to address your nutrition and your movement and your sleep and your stress. I believe you have to go one step further up and address your mindset and the way you interact with the world. And so this book for me is really trying to go all the way upstream to the root cause and understand that actually sometimes our lifestyle behaviors, like our food choices, for example, we can keep hearing that too much sugar is bad for us, but most people who are consuming too much sugar or too much alcohol for that matter, they already know that. Mm-hmm. Another book or a podcast telling them the problems with excess sugar or excess alcohol, I don't think that's the problem. We need to understand that every behavior that we engage with in our life serves a role. And too often, Kelly, we try and change the behavior without understanding the role it plays in our life. So let's take sugar as an example, right? Because it's something that many people are trying to reduce. And often in January, they'll do it for 2 or 3 weeks. Like, right, I'm having a January free from sugar or whatever it might be.
Right.
And you can apply this to alcohol as well. But ultimately, if your sugar intake or your alcohol intake is your way of managing the stress in your life, sure, you can white knuckle it for 3 weeks. But the reason we revert back to our previous behaviors, in my experience, is because we haven't addressed the root cause. If stress is driving your sugar consumption, you either need to reduce the amount of stress in your life or find an alternative method of dealing with the stress that doesn't involve sugar. Otherwise, that behavior will start to return back. And so this book, Make Change It Lasts, goes through what I consider a lot of these really root cause beliefs that we have that mean that each year we're buying new health books, we're trying to get healthier, we do it for a few weeks, but we kind of then beat ourselves up and go, why can't I stick to anything? Why can't I make this last? Why can I do it for 3 months and feel good and have high energy and have more presence? But then I revert back. And so this book is my attempt to try and help people understand the real root causes of their behaviors. And by understanding that and then addressing it, my contention is that every single one of us will start to be able to make change that truly lasts in our lives.
Beautifully said. And as you talk about stress, because I'm, and getting to the root cause, then like stress is kind of this blanket word. And of course, the modern pace of life is just, it has an innate form of stress and pressure on us to keep up with the Joneses and everything else. But under that, for each of us differently in different conditioning, it's how we relate to life and how we relate to stress that causes the stress. So getting down deeper to like, what are our things, whether it's perfectionism, exactly, people pleasing, our programming as these wounded children that drives our stress, and getting to that cause.
100%. And that's kind of what this book is about, because even the word stress, I was thinking about this on the plane over to the States. There's external stress and internal stress. So when a lot of people think about stress, they think about their boss and their workload and their email inbox and the traffic or whatever it might be. And I accept that there are external stresses in life, and for many of us, they can be quite difficult to manage. But actually, you can go one step deeper and understand that actually a lot of stress comes from the way we interact with the world. It's internally driven. It's our beliefs about the world that determine whether this kind of neutral external event actually becomes stressful or not. And can I share, Kelly, when I really, really understood this?
Yes.
I'd been thinking this way for many years, but still to this date, when people ask me, because my podcast has been going for 7 years now, and we're about to hit episode 500, and people will often ask me, Rangan, which is the most impactful episode you've ever recorded? It's very hard. It's like trying to choose a favorite child, right? I can't do it. But the one conversation that keeps rising to the top for me, because of the impact it had on me, was about 3 years ago with a lady called Edith Eger.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
We had her on the podcast, yeah.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
Edith changed my life. And, we absorb messages when we're ready for them, right? We can hear that message and be in a certain state in our life and in our head, and we don't absorb it. For whatever reason, I was ready for that message. And I was literally not the same person after that conversation as before. And I'll tell you why. Your audience probably know, if they heard that episode that you did with Edith, but when Edith was 16 years old, growing up in Eastern Europe, one day her family got a knock on the door, and herself, her sister, her parents got put on a train to Auschwitz concentration camp. I think within 2 hours of getting there, both of her parents were murdered. And then later on that day, she was asked to dance for the senior prison guards. I mean, it's incredible. Her parents had just been murdered, and now, because she's a dancer, the senior male prison guards would like this young lady to dance for them. Okay. And there's so many things I remember from that conversation, but one of the things she said to me was, Rangan, when I was dancing, I wasn't dancing in Auschwitz. In my mind, I was dancing in Budapest Opera House. There was a full house. I was wearing a beautiful blue dress. The orchestra was playing. I thought, this is incredible. Your parents have just been murdered. You're in one of the darkest places that it's possible to be in as a human being. And you're using the last thing that your mother told you, which is nobody can ever take from you what you put inside your own mind. I thought, that is incredible. Then she told me that while she was in Auschwitz, she started to see the prison guards as prisoners. She said they weren't free. In my mind, I'm free, but they're not free and they're not living their life. I thought, this is just incredible. And then there's many things she said, but the final word she said to me were this. She said, Rangan, I have lived in Auschwitz, and I can tell you the greatest prison you will ever live inside is the prison you create inside your own mind. That has changed my life. I feel that that's tattooed onto my heart. I think about that all the time, because what it taught me, and I knew this anyway, but what it really taught me, because I was really ready for that message, is that life is made up of a series of experiences, and we get to put a story on each one of those experiences, and the story we choose to take determines the impact of that experience on us. It determines whether that situation is stressful or not. So that conversation inspired me to go, I can reframe anything in my life. Okay, I don't need to be a victim to life anymore and go that the way I'm feeling is because that person treated me like this, or because that person cut me up in the road, or someone was mean to me on social media, or whatever it might be. Whenever I fall into that trap, which is rare these days, I go, hey, Rangan, you know what? Edith could reframe things in Auschwitz. You can probably reframe this in your life. And I think that's a superpower. Once you realize that most events in life are neutral, it's the story we put on them that determine whether it's going to be stressful or not. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then relating that to a lifestyle change, let's use sugar as an example, because I think it's a great example. One of the key things I write about in this book is that emotional stress is not neutral. So let's take a prime example. I'm in LA at the moment. I'm very jet lagged, and there's quite a bit of traffic on the way here, so I was running a bit late. Now, many people, when they're driving to work, if they're cut up by another driver, they push in front of them, or, they think it's okay to start mouthing off in their car. Stupid idiot, they shouldn't be driving, they need their eyes checked, whatever it might be. I used to be that person, okay? So I'm not criticizing. But once you realize that you have a choice in how you respond, it changes your life and it changes your sugar intake, and I'll explain why. If you believe, like if that driver, if you say to yourself, I've got every right to feel stressed now because that driver cut me up, like you become a victim to the world, right? You start to mouth off, you're generating stress inside your body. You will have to neutralize that stress in some way. Now, you may do it in a healthy way by going for a walk, but usually it's an extra coffee, it's an extra sugar, it's a glass of wine, or whatever it might be. It's our way of neutralizing the emotional stress that we generated ourselves with our response. And I absolutely believe that if you can get to this root cause in your own life, and the book will help people do that in 9 different ways, and go, I don't have to choose that response. I can train myself to not react to this. And there's plenty of things we can talk about and how you can do that. You will find that naturally your behaviors, let's say sugar or alcohol, they naturally start to change for the better, because often we're using those behaviors to deal with this internal discomfort that we feel. Did that all make sense?
Totally. We put this internal pressure on ourselves based on our conditioning and the stories we attach to the circumstances in our life that are neutral circumstances. And we're taking it so personally, and then we're in our head, and our ego starts to come up with this whole narrative and how they're to blame and we're victims because they cut us off, or we're late, or whatever it is, and then we're suffering. And then to release that pressure of this like story that we're putting in our head and beating ourselves up or beating up the world, and we drink a coffee or eat the sugar or drink the alcohol to diffuse that pressure, or to escape, deny, not deal with it.
Yeah, and then we think that here's the problem, and this is why I wrote this book, right? And then we beat ourselves up. We go, why am I eating so much sugar when I know it's bad for me? Why am I over consuming alcohol when I know it's bad for me? And we feel that we are failing. Mm-hmm. And then we think another new health book is what we need, or a new podcast. And I say that as an author and a podcaster myself. Yeah. But I don't believe that more knowledge is necessarily what most of us need. I think most of us, people who listen to your show, Kelly, are pretty in tune with themselves, right? They want to find that inner peace. They're looking for ways to improve their lives. That's why they're tuning in. Mm-hmm. I think most people who listen to your show already know the basics of what they need to do to improve the quality of their lives. I don't think the knowledge is the issue, that the external knowledge, it's the internal knowledge, the self-awareness, the insight. Why do I keep going to these certain behaviors? And I'm really so passionate about this idea. Like, chapter 1 is probably my favorite chapter in the book. It's called Trust Yourself. And the reason I wrote that is because what I see today is we're living in this world where we have a bombardment of information. Like, there's blogs, there's Instagram posts, there's podcasts like ours, there's books. And sometimes the information is conflicting, right? And I would find this on my podcast, right? I talked to one so-called expert one week, and they would talk, let's say, about diet and how this is the right approach for someone with their diet. 2 months later, you're talking to a different, well-credentialed expert who has an alternative approach. And then I would get all these DMs in my Instagram from people saying, hey, Dr. Chaterjee, I'm getting really confused. I don't know which expert to trust. And I think that's the wrong question, Kelly. I think the correct question, or the more helpful question, is, the question shouldn't be which expert should I trust? It should be, why do I no longer trust myself? And I think we need to step into our own power and go, okay, I'm not saying ignore experts, but listen to them and then put it through your own filter. Try. Like, if you have 2 people you respect and they're promoting 2 different types of diets, I tell you what, why don't you try one of them for 4 weeks and pay attention to how you feel, your energy, your digestion, your bloating, your sleep, and then try the other one for 4 weeks and pay attention to the same things. You will know which is the right diet for you. And I feel it's such a big problem that we've outsourced our own inner wisdom and expertise to external experts. And I say that as a so-called expert myself.
As an external expert, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I want to help people, but the truth is I don't know exactly for that individual who might be listening to my podcast or following me on Instagram. I don't know exactly what the right approach is for them because I don't know their life. Does that make sense?
Totally. This is the messaging. I actually closed the HEAL conference that was just this past weekend with that very thing. And it is kind of this, I feel like we're moving into this phase of like de-gurification.
Yeah.
And we need the teachers, we need the masters, we need the experts like you who have the experience and the training. But then we need to tune into our own instrument, our intuition that will never lead us astray, and keep cultivating that awareness, because our body is so intelligent and is constantly
Agreed.
giving us feedback of what our truth is and what works for us, because we're all so bio-individual with backgrounds and conditioning and different food, and different microbiomes that aren't even human cells. They're just from our environment. And so it is about tuning into your instrument for your truth, because I have people like Anthony William, I have people they're totally contrasting, and even in Heal, I curate the people that inspire me, but even I'll take 80% of what some person says and apply it to me, because the other 20% that doesn't feel right, So it's like it's gathering the wisdom and then putting it exactly through your filter.
And I believe that the most important practice for most of us each day is actually a daily practice of solitude. I believe that with all my heart.
I agree.
Because in this world of information overload, if you wake up and the first thing you do is go online and start consuming even good quality information, right? You're just getting all this noise in from the outside, the news, your email inbox, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is, YouTube, you're getting all this noise in. Then you work all day and then you're still doing it in bed at night. There's been no point in the day where you have just paused to start listen to what is your body saying, right? What are the messages that I'm being told? And I believe that a daily practice of solitude, and that could be meditation, it could be journaling, it could be breath work, it could be a walk around the block for 20 minutes without looking at your phone. It could be even a cup of coffee in the morning without also checking Instagram. Just a bit of mindful time to check into yourself. If people start doing that regularly, I think they'll be surprised by how much they'll learn about their lives. They'll start to listen to themselves. I realized a few years ago that when my stress load builds up, I get a tightness in my upper right back.
Me too.
But that would have been happening for years. But I was so busy, I could never hear the noise or the signal my body was sending me. Now, because I do have a daily practice of solitude first thing in the morning each day, if that starts to come on, that's great information for me. It's like an early warning sign to say, hey, Rangan, you might be pushing it too hard at the moment. You might need to cancel a few things. Maybe you need to go to bed earlier tonight. Maybe you need to go for a long walk this evening after work, or whatever it might be. It's a signal where I can then take aversive action. Whereas if you ignore those signals, and I would say most people these days are ignoring those signals, they keep pushing week after week, month after month, year after year. And that's why rates of burnout are so high. In the UK, there's a study that came out about a year ago suggesting that 88% of UK workers have experienced some degree of burnout in the past 2 years. And I would bet the number's higher in America.
I would bet that too.
And that's an alarming statistic.
Yes, it is.
And yes, you can have a horrible boss and you can have work pressure. I accept all of those things. But at the same time, burnout doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow, insidious process. And the signs are always there if you pay attention. Right? But we're not paying attention. I think, I don't know how often you talk about that on this show, but I imagine it's a key part of one of your messages. Like, you have to pay attention to yourself.
Totally. Your body starts to tap you on your shoulder. It starts to whisper, and then the shouts get a little louder. Then eventually you get whacked over the head with a 2x4 from the universe, either with an injury or an illness, saying you must slow down and connect with yourself again.
Yeah, and I don't think this is helpful for people. I mean, there's plenty of practical tips in the book, but one thing I do each morning, I do have this sort of little morning routine that I've been building on for years, because I realize I'm just a better human being when I have time to myself each morning, right? But I have to make, I was going to say sacrifices. I don't really consider them sacrifices anymore. So I try and be very careful with my language these days. I used to feel I had to defend my practices and go, yeah, I know you can't all do it. But the truth is, like, I've made choices. And with every choice, there's a consequence, right? So I like to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, because ever since I had children who always got up early, I realized I kind of benefit from a bit of time to myself before the kids are up. And so I go to bed really early, right? And I get up and I have this little process, and I do several things in my morning routine. One of the things I do is ask myself 3 questions every morning. Okay, so I sit there with a coffee, and in my journal, I write the answer to 3 questions. And the first question is, what is one thing I deeply appreciate about my life? Okay, just a very simple question of gratitude. And we know from the scientific research that a daily practice of gratitude can have profound impacts on your mood, anxiety, depression, decision-making, productivity, sleep, whatever it might be. There's all kinds of studies on the benefits of gratitude. So it's a simple question. It takes me less than a minute to answer, and I write it down in my journal. Then the second question is, what is the most important thing I have to do today? I love that question. Because in a world where our to-do lists are never, ever done, this question forces me to make a decision. And it doesn't mean that by saying that's the most important thing, that other things aren't important. No, the skill in that question, the magic is that you have to decide. So some days it will be, I haven't seen my wife much for the last few days. I must spend some quality time with her this evening once the kids are in bed. On other days, it might be a work deadline, or I must finish that project, or my book deadline, whatever it might be. Other days, it is, oh, I'm working from home today. When the kids walk through the door from school at 4:15, make sure you put your laptop down, your phone away, so that you're present to hear what your kids have to say to you. And the magic in this question, and I literally challenge all of your listeners to do this, Kelly. If they take nothing else from this podcast today, ask yourself that one question for the next 7 days every morning, and I guarantee your life will start to change. Because it means every morning you're specifying one important thing that you have to do, then go and act on it and get that thing done that day. Do that for 7 days, and you will have 7 times that week done one of the most important things each day. Do that for 30 days. Your life will have transformed. How do I know? I've been recommending this to patients for years. I do it myself. And it helps people in this world where we always feel that we're not doing enough. That you can never finish a to-do list. Let's say you complete all your emails, Kelly, today. I mean, I don't think I've ever done that, but let's say you have done that. And then you take a break to make yourself a cup of tea. In those 10 minutes, you may have received another 10 emails. There's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
So I kind of feel that if we're waiting for all the, like if we feel that we're only going to do the important things in our life when our to-do lists are done, we're going to be waiting a long time. They're never done, right?
The more you do, the longer they get.
Yeah. So you have to at some point go, no, my to-do list is always going to be there, but let me make sure I do the most important thing today. So it's a gratitude question. It's a question of priorities. And then the third question, again, this is how I finish off my morning routine, is what quality do I want to showcase to the world today? And I love it. It's a question about intention. It's almost like a visualization question where we don't realize that most of who we are each day is just a repetition of how we were the day before. We just repeat our past behaviors and our past conditioning unless we step outside and go, how do I want to be in the world today? Right? How do I want to show up in the world today?
And what are the top 3 answers that come up most for you for that quality?
Well, I would say often it's patience, compassion, and maybe the quality of love. They're all quite related, right? It's always about, what does the ideal version of Rangan look like? I don't want to be reactive and getting stressed out. I want to be present with my family. I want to be a kind, compassionate person. It's one of my highest values in life, is how I treat people. It's what I try and instill in my children, that the most important thing, guys, is not your exam grades at school. It's how you treat people. I want you guys to treat every single person, whether they're cleaning toilets or they're the president of the United States, with the same level of respect. It's something my parents instilled in me. I think it's one of the most important things in life. And so it's a reminder to me, if in the morning I go, what's the quality I want to showcase to the world today? And let's say I haven't slept well, or I've got a busy work day, and I say compassion, then what it means is if later on in the day, I'm tempted to not behave in a compassionate way, because I'm human, like all of us, it doesn't mean I won't always, but it's much more likely I'll choose compassion because I said it in the morning. I'd be like, oh, Rangan, you said this morning you want to show the quality of compassion. So if someone in your team, or you're getting an email from someone where you're tempted to be reactive, I just take a pause. Now, if this is of interest to your audience, I also have a few questions I do in the evening.
We love this.
But two of the questions I do in the evening kind of help you with the morning questions. One of them is, what went well today? And the other one is, what can I do differently tomorrow? Like, everything I try and offer to people is simple and practical, because I know people feel really busy and they don't feel that they have time. So the answer to that could be, what went well today? Okay, what went well today? Oh, I had a really busy day at work, got back late, but I still had the time and energy to cook a home-cooked meal for my family, let's say. That went well today, okay? Maybe 20 things went badly, but we're already hardwired to look at the negatives in life, right? Psychologists say that we take in 9 bits of negative information for every bit of positive information. Okay, that's what's kept us alive for hundreds of thousands of years.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. But unless you do something about it, like a daily practice of gratitude, your thoughts and feelings aren't going to be negative. Right? What you practice, you get good at. So if you practice gratitude every day, you start to see gratitude where you previously wouldn't see it. So what went well today, you're focusing on, it's a bit of a gratitude type question in the evening. And then the second part of that is, what can I do differently tomorrow? I love that question, because let's say in the morning, you said, I want to show the world the quality of compassion. But let's say actually at lunchtime, you just lost it with one of your colleagues or whatever. You weren't able to do it. You were tired, you got triggered, and you reacted. What you don't want to do is beat yourself up. Guilt, shame, these things are never going to help you in the long term, right? So these questions I think are very kind, because in the evening you can go, what would I like to do differently tomorrow? Well, tomorrow, I want to be different, because today I said I want to be compassionate and I wasn't able to. Let me see tomorrow if I can answer the question in the morning in the same way, and really try and pay attention and try my best to be compassionate tomorrow. The beautiful thing about these questions is that they don't take long. They're completely free. You don't have to go and buy anything to do them. And if you do them for a few days, for a few weeks, you will develop an insight about yourself and your behaviors that will enable you to make changes that last. Because you're learning about yourself each day. You're going, oh, I said I was going to be compassionate, but I wasn't able to be. And that's how we change our behaviors. It's those little small changes each day where we learn about ourselves, we learn about when we get triggered, and we start to change them. 1 month later, you're like a different person. And hand on heart, Kelly, I'm sitting here today in front of you. I'm 47 years old. I've never felt this good. Like, I'm in such a good place in life, right? I'm happy. I'm content. I feel this deep inner peace these days. And I didn't 5 years ago, but I've done the work. I watched your documentary. When did it come out?
7 years ago.
Right. I remember it was out on Netflix first, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I remember being on my sofa with my wife, just flicking Netflix and going, oh, that looks good. And watching it, going, wow, that was amazing. Right? I was always interested in this kind of stuff. And I believe that we can all change, right? We think that who we are today is how we have to stay. It's simply not true. And we can think of a million different reasons that keep us stuck. No, this happened. My parents treated me like this. Of course, I've got no option but to be like this. Hey, I get it. Some people have had really difficult upbringings, but you can change. And it's not as hard as we think. By saying it's hard, I've realized this. by saying that change is really hard, we kind of, we set the intention that this is going to be hard.
Right.
And
we're creating that belief system.
We're creating that belief system, oh, this is hard, it's going to be a struggle. I believe that effortless change is possible once you've gone down to the root cause and examined your beliefs. What are your beliefs about the world? And you can change them. Mm-hmm. I used to be really competitive, Kelly. Right? Most of my friends would say,
I can tell by your resume. You're winning. You're winning.
No, but I'm not anymore. I'm not competitive anymore. Yeah. And I've changed that because, look, the truth is, I won't, without going into this in detail, but in essence, my parents were immigrants to the UK in the 1960s, right? My dad came over from India, and the immigrant mentality is certainly the Indian immigrant mentality, and I'm sure it's the same in the US, is that you want your kids to excel at school. Because if they excel, they're not going to face the same struggles that our parents did, right? That's their mindset.
Correct.
So I can remember coming home from school at the age of 6 or 7, and I would have 19 out of 20 in a test. And mum and dad wouldn't say, well done. They'd say, what did you get wrong? Okay, how can we not get that wrong next time? Did you come top of the class? No, dad, I came second. Okay, who came top? Okay. Now, I've gone through that process where once you start examining your childhood, you can start to have a bit of resentment against your parents, but I don't have that anymore. I realize that every situation has multiple perspectives, right? So they love me and want me to be the best that I can be. So they're driving me to excel. Unfortunately, little Rangan at that age takes on the belief that I'm only loved when I'm achieving.
Yes, little Kelly has that same belief.
Right. And
causes a lot of stress later.
It causes a lot of stress because, I'm someone, it's almost, it's not embarrassing, but when someone reads out your resume in front of you, it's like you can feel a bit uncomfortable. And it's like, I have ticked off a lot of societal definitions of success, mm-hmm. right? But a few years ago, I'd had my second or my third Sunday Times bestseller. I wasn't happy. I wasn't contented. And I realized, oh, wow. If you keep looking for external validation, it ain't going to fix the internal issues that you may or may not have, mm-hmm. right? So it was really good for me to get this external success to go, oh, it really doesn't make you happy. And, I've gone and done a lot of the inner work with therapy, with these kind of exercises. I am no longer competitive. Competitiveness was my adaptation to my childhoods. Mm-hmm. If you only feel that you get love when you're achieving, well, developing the traits of competitiveness is a damn good adaptation.
Right.
Because it's gonna drive you to keep pushing and push hard. But once I realized that was an adaptation, it wasn't who I am, I started to change it. And this is why I'm so passionate about this book, Kelly. And I really want people to know that they can change. So much of their personality is not who they are, it's who they became. Mm-hmm. And you can unbecome it if you want to. You just have to set the intention to go, right, let me start going there and let me start doing the work. So I'm not competitive anymore. And I'll tell you how that plays out in my life now. It was the same with my last book on happiness, but this book comes out December 31st, right? I've already won by writing this book. Mm-hmm. Even if nobody buys it, right? I've still won because I wrote the book that my heart wanted to write.
Yes, I feel that.
And I mean that. I've spent so much of my life looking for external validation. I don't anymore. I validate myself. Yeah. I like who I am. I've done the work, and I want to share that story with people because I believe everyone can do that, but they need to be empowered to know that it is possible.
Totally. And I'm 45, and I'm unwinding the same kind of searching for external validation through success and only loved if I achieve and if I do. Greg Braden guided us through this, exercise of getting into, he's all about heart math and brain and heart coherence. And, he got us into coherence very quickly, dropped us in our heart, slowed down our breath, our attention's on our hearts. And then we asked our hearts these series of questions and hear that. And just that practice alone, again, really simple, just like your daily practice in the morning and the evening. This is a simple container to reconnect you with yourself. Gratitude, set the tone for the day so that you're literally, when you're in gratitude, you're in your heart. When you're in, if you're just letting your mind run the show, like you said, we're hardwired for survival. So we're going to look for and filter in the negative. So I find, like, I love this simple practice in this container that you're creating to help us prioritize, because that's my stress. I'm like so busy, but I've been really going, okay, it's the story that I'm adding on to everything that I'm doing that then causes stress. And who's been getting the brunt of my stress is my 5-year-old daughter. Well, she every day should be my priority. And so she's giving me this motivation to switch the story that I'm telling myself. So, for instance, I just got back from this conference. Friday I spoke to Amy, who connected me with you, and was like, Dr. Chaterjee is here. Can you come on Tuesday morning? And I knew my body was going to be exhausted. I knew my mind, and I like to, because I'm a perfectionist and I want to do well.
You want to prep.
Read the book, and I want to prepare.
I'm the same.
But when I came home, because I've been gone, my priority yesterday afternoon was just to be with my daughter. And then my body is kind of like a little bit tired because of the stress of this event. So I literally didn't have any time to prep for this. And the old me, maybe 6 months ago, a year ago, would have been so stressed and taking it out on her. And I'm just like, I don't want dis-ease. I want ease. Exactly. And I can only do and I have to trust that, just sitting here connecting with you, knowing that the little I read about this book is exactly what I need and I'm doing in my life right now is perfect. And just to come and have a conversation in this easy, and then I can be present for my daughter. It's beautiful.
Yeah. What do people, have you ever read the book by Bronnie Ware, 5 Regrets of the Dying?
I have.
I mean,
and they all say the same thing.
Bronnie Ware, for people who don't know, she was a palliative care nurse for a number of years. I had the most beautiful, heart-led conversation with her on my show about a year and a half ago. It was just so wonderful. And basically, she cared for dying people for about 7 or 8 years. And she kind of said they all kind of say the same things on their deathbed. It was things like, I wish I'd worked less. I wish I spent more time with my friends and family. I wish I'd allowed myself to be happy. I wish I'd lived my life and not the life that other people expected of me. And I think about those regrets all the time because I think, okay, these guys have shared their regrets. She's written them in a book. Now, why can't we learn from those regrets and apply them in our life so that we don't have them?
Right.
I wish I spent more time with my friends and family. That's what you did yesterday.
Yeah.
You're away for the weekend. You thought, actually, you know what? You're an intelligent lady. You know how to hold a conversation. You know that I know how to hold a conversation. Really, is there anyone you could pick up off the street and not speak to for an hour? Yeah. I don't know you well, Kelly, but I suspect that you can probably talk to anyone for an hour. Yeah. You're personable. You know how to. You're inquisitive. You're curious. Actually, you know what? You're probably going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And your daughter doesn't care about who you've got to speak to today.
No, she doesn't.
She doesn't care. She just wants her mum present with her. And can I share another exercise that I often do? And it's been transformative and it relates to these regrets of the dying. So, and all these exercises are in the book. There's loads of them for people who want them,
Perfect.
right?
Yes.
But this exercise is called Write Your Own Happy Ending. Okay. And it's dead simple. And I'd love, in fact, maybe we can do it with you now.
Okay.
In real time, if you're up for it.
I love it.
Okay. So imagine you're on your deathbed, Kelly. This is your last day on earth. Okay. Now think back over your life. What are 3 things you will want to have done?
Oh, gosh. Oh, my goodness.
And just speak from your heart. Don't worry about a perfectionist answer. It doesn't matter. You can change this. And if you don't want it, you don't have to. But does anything come to mind?
I mean, I want to have another child. So I want my 2 babies. I have 1 already. I want to travel more. I mean, I've traveled a lot, but I want to travel and with no schedule or pressure. Like, I just want to be in culture and, yeah, I mean, I think it's just that quality of really doing things that light me up.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like an adventurer. I love doing fun things like wake surfing and snowboarding, and like, I just want to, you know.
Okay, so
Does this make sense?
I love it. So that's the first part of the exercise. It's a 2-part exercise. Okay, so the first part is you fast forward into the future.
Okay.
And go, okay. And again, you might need a few goes at this.
Yeah.
And it's not as if you get it perfect first time and then you can't revisit it. I revisit this often.
Yes.
So the first part is, you know, what are 3 things you'll want to have done looking back on your life? And then you come right back into the present and go, okay, what are 3 weekly habits that I could put into my life that guarantee I'm going to get the happy ending that I just defined that I want? And so perhaps I'll share my answers in case it helps you understand how this relates, right? So for me, I think on my deathbed, and of course I don't know, so it's a thought experiment, but I believe if this is my last day, I'd be looking back on my life going, I hope I've spent quality time with my family.
Yes.
I hope I've had time to pursue the things I'm passionate about. And I hope that I've done something that leaves a positive impact on the world.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I want those too.
Yeah. So then I fast forward to the present, and I have this literally stuck up on my fridge in my kitchen.
Got it.
I write down, okay, so for me, and again, it doesn't mean this is what anyone else needs, but for me, I've got on that list, okay, so each week I want to have 5 meals with my wife and kids where I'm fully present and not distracted by work. Okay, so I write that down. That's one of my weekly happiness habits. The second one is, if I've had time to go for a long run or play my guitar and write some songs or whatever it might be each week, then I've had time for my passions. And if I release an episode of my podcast each week, which I've been doing for 7 years now, I know that I'm doing something that's going to leave a positive impact on the lives of others. So it's a very simple exercise. Again, it kind of relates to that what's the most important thing I have to do today question. It's basically saying, in a world where we have infinite pressure on our time and there's all these things that we think we should be doing, I'm saying, great, let's do those things, but let's make sure that the important stuff gets done. So the important stuff for me is, my success is worthless if it costs me my marriage and my relationship with my kids. I, probably like you, I know, and I've got to know over the last few years, many kind of really influential and famous people. And honestly, hand on heart, so many of them just don't come across as happy to me. Like, that's the truth.
Yes.
There's very few of them I go, oh God, I wish I had your life. Like, I could do more in my career. I could push more to have more success, but I don't want to. Like, I've got enough. One of my favorite phrases in life is from the Tao Te Ching, and it says, true wealth is knowing what is enough. I've got enough. Like, I've got a job that I love. I earn enough money, and I'm lucky to do that. I accept that. I get to do things I love. You know, I don't need to keep pushing. I take 6 weeks off every summer. Okay. And my family and I would go on adventures around the world. Now, I acknowledge not everyone can do that. I couldn't do that a few years ago. Right. But I work for myself now. And yes, not everyone can do it, but there's a lot of people who could do it and don't.
I also believe that when you create this container of these daily practices where you get specific and you distill down what's actually important, you're not distracted, you're not pulled in all these directions, and then all of a sudden your life is going to reorganize in a way where you start to make your own money, you start to make enough, you start to have the potential to take 6 weeks off and take care of yourself because you've gotten specific and brought into consciousness. And once you're aware of what these 3 things are, what you're grateful for, what these qualities are, what your priorities are, then your life starts to organize because you have this practice, and you change your state and you change what you're magnetizing into your life.
It's so true. And people maybe have to take a leap of faith in that. But it really is true. I think we look for change in the wrong places. We're trying this big overhaul of our life in one go. Like we wake up on January the 1st and think, right, that's it. It's going to be different. I'm going to spin 4 times a week. Well, whatever it might be. I'm going to quit alcohol. I'm going to quit sugar. It's like these things very rarely last for people in the long term unless they go one step deeper. And why I love these simple questions is because, listen, I think therapy can be incredibly helpful. I'm not, I've had it myself. I think it's really helpful. But the truth is, some people can't afford it. Some people don't have access to it. I've worked throughout my career. Yes, I've worked throughout my career in a whole variety of different populations. Like I've worked in a practice in a place called Oldham in the UK for 7 years, in a very deprived area, very low socioeconomic status. A lot of people on social security benefits, working 2 jobs, a lot of single parents. And I believe they have every right to good quality health information just as much as an affluent group of people. And I believe that those people can change their lives because I help them. And I never I get if you have money and access to therapy, yes, it can be easier for sure. But even if you don't, there are things that you can do that start to make a difference. I know that to be true because I've seen it. And these questions, why I love them so much, is that they help you get to know yourself. And getting to know yourself better is, I would argue, the most important step if you want to make change that lasts.
I totally agree. And this is so beautiful because I woke up, I gave this closing talk for my HEAL conference. And then I woke up the next morning, there was all these things that I wanted to say. And we're literally saying them in this podcast today. And healing is about an excavation of getting down deeper and deeper in connection with yourself, remembering who you truly are, remembering the gifts that you came in here to express. And like one woman, has this remarkable healing cancer story, but just got a scan and the cancer is back. So it's an opportunity to now go deeper. Life is giving you these circumstances to wake you up to reconnecting to yourself. And I say that because, and also this quote that came up that I love is, in order for you to love yourself and to really reconnect with the truth of who you are, you can't hate the experiences that shaped you, just like you said.
I love it.
And so in order to heal, in order to create this life that you have finally stepped into of contentment, you have to get clear, but you have to get out of victimhood and tap in to our power to create and change our state through things like gratitude, through things like self-reflective questioning, so that we create this container. And then the last thing that I love about these daily practices that you're sharing is the allowance to be human. We're all human. We're works in progress. We're going to be works in progress until our deathbed. But if we create these clear containers to do the investigation and the excavation on ourselves and reconnect with ourselves, that's when we can just align with what is enough and what's important, which is authentic relationships with loved ones, expressing our passion for our own joy, and then serving others and being an impact in the world.
I love that. You said the word victimhood there. When I think about these root causes, I've always, ever since I qualified for medical school, I've been fascinated by root causes. And it's probably one of the things that really bothered me the most about my medical school education is I didn't feel we looked at root causes. It was a lot of symptom suppression with drugs. And that can have a role, but we overuse that. And I've always been frustrated within medicine by that method of practicing. It's never felt right with me. And if you think about root causes, one of the key decisions, and it's a choice, it is a decision. One of the key decisions we make in our lives is whether we're going to be a victim to life or the architect of our life. Bad things are going to happen. I shouldn't even say bad. Things are going to happen.
You say adversity.
Adversity, yeah. There's a chapter called Expect Adversity. Don't be surprised by it. It's going to happen. Don't think that everything in your life is never going to go wrong. It is from time to time, but it's how you react to that. you can choose, and I use that word choose again because your mindset that you take to life, it is a choice. You can choose to look at the world and go, the world is happening for me instead of to me. Mm-hmm. Now, if you want to be a skeptic, you can go, oh, prove it. Hey, listen, I'm not here to prove it or disprove it. What I'm saying is if you choose to take that belief, I guarantee your life will start to change for the better. Because when these adverse events happen, like this is what I teach my kids, right? Like last few weeks ago, they just started the new school term. And my daughter was starting a new school. You know, she's just gone into high school. And the kids were talking about, what was it now? I think they were talking about, oh, I hope I'm in a class this year with my friends. And I've learned all these lessons in my 40s. I'm like, damn, I wish I'd learned them. Not, I don't because it was my journey, but I want to teach my kids these as young as possible.
Right.
I'm like, okay, guys, let's say you get put in a class where your friends are not. I understand that that's not ideal, but let's flip it. If that happens, what is the opportunity here? What are the benefits of this that you would never have got to experience had this not had happened? Mm-hmm. And we were sitting at the kitchen table. I talk to my kids about this all the time. And they're like, I said, come on, you go first, darling. You go, and then after a while, they're like, well, maybe I'm going to end up making new friends. And I said, yeah. And you probably wouldn't have made those friends if you were already with your existing friends because you would have just hung out with them. I'm not saying it's ideal. I'm just saying every situation, there are upsides. Yeah. If you start looking for them, but it's a choice. You don't have to do that. I mentioned the example of someone cutting you up in the road before, like on the way to work. Mm-hmm. One of the phrases that literally changed how I interact with the world is, if I was that person, I'd be doing exactly the same as them.
Yes.
That is it's hard because there's quite a few things that have impacted my life for the better, but that is one of the top things because you start to interact with the world with this kind of energy of curiosity and compassion. Like if that happens, it's like, oh, maybe that driver maybe he was up last night with his daughter who had earache. Maybe that driver is rushing to get to work. They've already been late twice in the last month. If they're late again, they're going to be fired. And that's how they feed their family. And actually, here's the other thing, Kelly. The truth, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. For your happiness and your well-being, all that matters is that you put an empowering story on that situation. Mm-hmm. Like I believe that the truth doesn't matter.
Yeah. And there's eons. Dr. Shefali talked about this at the HEAL conference, and then Peter said exactly this. Peter Crone said the exact same thing as you. Dr. Shefali said there's eons of, there's this intelligence of the universe that's orchestrating all of this. There's eons of little reactions and interactions of different cultures of the driver's lineage and ancestry and all the things that led him to that very moment to cut you off, and then all of the things that led you to the point of stress and presence that you went to, like. It's not about that moment. There's so much other stuff going on that you have to trust. And in this, what if that driver just saved you from being hit by a semi one block down the road?
Exactly.
We have to have that perspective of life is for us and never against us. Life is happening for us, not to us. That changes everything.
Your life will, you don't have to choose that perspective. But if you don't, you will continually be a victim to life. You will think that the way you are is because of things and other people. And I talk about that in the introduction. Many of us are so reliant on things outside of our control to go a certain way in order for us to feel good. The traffic's good. Our boss is kind to us. The barista at the cafe smiles at us. Our email inbox is manageable. Okay, sure. I love all those things to happen as well. But you know what? Often they don't happen. Mm. And if my internal well-being is dependent on those things happening, then I'm basically like a puppet. I'm just reacting to what's going on in the world around me. Mm. I have spent much of my life being that person, Kelly. And I've decided a few years ago, I'm not going to do that anymore. Yeah. And it's a choice. And it's a skill that we can all learn. And my hope is, what I've tried to do in the book is make loads and loads of practical suggestions for people and say, listen, I get that your life's busy. I get you've got a lot to do. You don't have to do everything, but play around with it. See which ones work for you and put it into practice. I pretty much guarantee your life will start to change. I've experienced it myself. And I've got over 2 decades of seeing thousands of patients. I've seen it change with them as well.
Yes, it's like a manual for co-creation. We could be either a victim of life, where we are at the mercy of circumstances that are going to go awry, or we can co-create with life. By having these practices, we shift our state, we shift what we're focusing our attention on, and then all of a sudden our life reorganizes. So it's really about waking up and becoming a co-creator. It's not always going to go the way we think it should go, but it is always happening for our highest and best good to come alive and to step into our greatest potential. It's going to be painful and shitty at times, but if we have these practices and awareness and this understanding and enough experience to show that it's working and it does work, then we can stick to it and we can have the resilience to navigate these challenging circumstances that are actually helping us grow.
As you said that, Kelly, I thought about one of the most, significant events in my life is when my dad died in 2013. So I moved back to the northwest of England in 2003. I grew up there. I went to university in Edinburgh, medical school. I was working there as a junior doctor. I moved back to help look after my dad. Dad got the autoimmune disease lupus when he was 57. He had to retire from work. He was a doctor. He was on dialysis for 15 years. He lost his eyesight. So those 15 years, basically, I was a carer along with my brother and mum for my dad. Very, very stressful time. And when Dad died in 2013, I really struggled to deal with it. It was the first time that I actually thought, oh wow, death really does happen. I know that sounds obvious, but I'd never really experienced it before. And I used to see my dad every day. I lived 5 minutes away. So there was this huge hole in my life. And I'd go out walking. I'd just go out, sit in parks and forests and think. And that was the start of my internal journey. That was the first time where I started to ask myself the big questions. Whose life am I leading? Is it my life or is it someone else's life? Where have these desires come from? And over the last few years, because as we have this conversation, when Dad nearly has been dead for like 12 years now. I can't quite believe it. Still feels just like a few years ago. But I've now come to the point, Kelly, where I see my dad's death as a gift. And what I mean by that is the things that I've learnt through my dad's death, the things I now do and share with the world, I don't believe I would have had that insight and knowledge if my dad was still alive. Firstly, I wouldn't have had the time because I was so busy being a carer. But secondly, the insights I've realized about life, the things I've learnt about myself, I've now come to the belief that my dad's death was a gift to me. He gifted me all of this information that I can now use to help myself and the world around me. But that's a choice. It's a choice. I'm choosing to look at that as, in the whole wider context of life. It doesn't mean I don't miss my dad. Like, I love my dad, I can't believe it's nearly 12 years. But once you start going down this road and start seeing the world as happening for you, not to you, you can start to reframe everything. And then you start to feel in control of your life. The world is out of control, frankly. Like, we can't control things. But you give yourself a sense of control that you're in the driver's seat here. Does that make sense?
It does. It totally does. I believe there's an intelligence that is orchestrating all of it that's far more intelligent than all of us. And we come into this world and this incarnation with a purpose, and healing and waking up and stepping into a life of contentment comes into stepping into the responsibility for our life. We're not to blame for our circumstances. No. Circumstances are going to happen. There's 8 billion souls on this planet coming in to do their thing. But we are responsible for, we are able to respond to life in a way that's empowered. And we're not victims of all of this. Is life is reflecting back to us so for instance, if I just learned some information last week and that woke me up to where, I wasn't feeling heard or seen in a relationship or abandoned, or, I have to look at that as a mirror going, where have I stayed in that. I tolerated that. I abandoned myself. I wasn't hearing and seeing my own truth. So all of these outside circumstances are mirroring back how we're treating ourselves, whether it's in our thoughts or beliefs, which are behaviors. So anyways, I just think I totally am aligned with everything you're saying. I'm so grateful for this book and this manual and this just practical guide for us to reconnect and just refocus on the things that matter. Yeah. And that's going to lead to a lot more contentment in our lives.
I really believe it is. And thank you. I've really enjoyed our conversations together. Honestly, it's been wonderful.
Thank you. Where can people find you and your book?
Well, Make Change At Last is all the usual places, all the bookshops, Amazon. You can find me on my website, drchaterjee.com. I guess the social media platform I'm most active on is Instagram, and it's at Dr Chaterjee, DrChaterjee.
Awesome. Well, I have certainly enjoyed our conversation. We are so aligned. We speak the same language. So thanks for making time for us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to the Heal with Kelly podcast. Be sure to tune in every Thursday for more empowering wisdom and inspiring healing stories. And make sure you hit the follow button on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss that one episode that holds the answer you've been searching for. Oh, and if you found this episode inspiring, please rate, review, and share Heal with Kelly so that we can grow our audience and reach more people. We truly appreciate it. Lots of love.